2023 is over. This was a year that had its ups and downs for me. At points, it was a good year for me. I was trying to expand my gaming taste more by trying genres I never play, like shooters, real-time strategy, and arcade-like games. I traveled to too many games, met and made some new friends, experienced a bunch of other media like comics, manga, movies, TV shows, and albums. But on the other hand, it was also some days where it was just too much. One of the most stressful days where getting up was a struggle. No motivation some days, anxiety increasing, panic attacks up the ass, and repressed memories coming back, and real world events to make me go into a state of questioning. I thought about making a video like this that you are watching right now. A video where I go over the general month with the videos I made and how the month was outside of that. And then move on to talk about the games I played that month since I played so many games this year. A disclaimer before we get into January. I will be going over some things that are a bit touchy with people. Anxiety, panic attacks, and Israel-Hamas war. Stuff like this I know is sensitive with people. But I made sure that the script didn't bring it all up since YouTube is a form of escapism. Also, since I played so many games this year, I thought to make this video more like a podcast with minimum visuals on it. Now, let us start off this year with January. January was a pretty good month overall. It was a calm before the storm moment. Nothing major really happened, besides starting a new semester of college, which was really stressful, but didn't really make me uncomfortable. With the new year, I wanted to go headstrong into making videos after a whole half a year where I didn't make any in 2022. I made 3 videos this month. The first video of the month was my problems with modern Pokemon Part 1. The video was made so that I could get my feelings out on modern Pokemon. I don't really hate this one, but wish I didn't release it without having played Scarlet before then. But it got some recognition and it did lead me to play Scarlet later down the line. I then decided to do the Amphibia Season 2 retrospective, which I am very proud of. I got all my feelings out there on this season and I am proud that I got so many views. I was a little scared that I was gonna bomb since the Season 1 video didn't perform all that well, but hey, it got the attention and that's all that matters for me. And finally, I made my top 10 movies video. It was just a reason for me to talk about my favorite movies. Not much to say here, but you are going to get one later down the line this month. So in between these videos, I played a lot of video games. To start off the month, I played Ultra Kill at the beginning. I have a weird relationship with shooters that aren't Halo. Whenever I play a shooter, there will be one point where I will just not play it for a while, or just not play it at all. Half-Life, made it to Forgot About Freeman, and just didn't have the urge to go back to it. Doom 2016, when I first picked it up around the same time this year, I played about 3 hours and barely had the urge to pick it up back up later the month. Halo was the only one that I was able to gravitate towards with its calm orchestrated music and more strategic combat. Ultra Kill is a shooter that when I learned there was a DMC-like style rating, I knew I was in for a good time. Each weapon is fun to use with the charge shot of the Piercer revolver, the magnet of the Attractor nail gun, and the ricochet shots with the Marksman revolver, just to name a few. What also made the gun fun to use is the many techs that you can abuse, like using the ricochet to shoot the flamethrower enemies up their fuel tanks to make them explode. Stuff like that is satisfying to pull off. The control you have with V1 is great, with the dash, ground slam, parry, and wall jump, making you move like an angel. You have the risk reward mechanic where if you go closer to the enemy and shoot him, you can regain health by getting smeared with the enemy's blood. But you also become an easier target to hit, and it's something I wish more shooters did. The puzzles, while simple, still give your brain the dopamine to continue, and the story is quite interesting, with you going further into hell and all of humanity is dead, and Gabriel is a villain you feel so bad about at the end of Act 1. The replayability for this game is also off the charts with it having a Bloody Palace-like mode called the Cyber Grind. Ultra Kill is a shooter I am excited for when it gets the full release and hope that it does well. Probably one of the best non-2023 games I played this year. Spark 1 was a quite unique game. Spark to me feels like a marriage of Sonic's high-speed platforming with Kirby's power-ups, but it doesn't really meet the highs of either game. I think that the first half of this game is pretty solid, with fun levels to go through, jamming music, and pretty visuals. But when I got to the later half of this game, it gave me deja vu to Sonic CD, with levels that pulled me all over the place, with stage 14 being the standout example. The power-ups didn't really do much to expand your moves aside from Wind giving you an air dash and Edgy being the move I used the most because it was the most powerful and had the best charge attack. The game doesn't really feel all that fast with levels that take way too long to complete for a 2D platformer, which is one of my least favorite things in modern platformers. The bosses are fine to fight against, and the visuals look really good aside from the cutscenes. This is probably the game that I know is good, but just isn't for me. I might play Fark Story later, but for now, I want to play other things before I get back to this game. Spark 2 is both better and worse than Spark 1. You are put into hallways where I feel like they want you to fight enemies, but you can easily dodge them. In the original game, you would want to battle enemies because they can sometimes drop health pickups. In the sequel, the enemies can just be walked past and you will have all of your health bars, which is more than the original. So there is no point in fighting them. The story is bad with this whole I'm your son thing that is really boring in this day and age. The music is sometimes reused, but is still really good. The bosses are easier thanks to the shield mechanic. The shield mechanic is broken with you being able to take no damage just by holding the left bumper, which can be abused in the level design as well. At least it's fun to blitz through the stages, and the Edgy power-up keeps your momentum with the triple air dash. This is the weakest Spark game that didn't give me much hope when heading into 3. But thankfully, Spark 3 is without a doubt the best Spark game, and it's not even a contest. What I like about this Spark game over the others is that there's more variety in this game with the vehicles and the different types of missions like grab X amount of medals to complete the level or race to the finish, which was basically just speedrunning levels. Spark is more fun to control than in the last game, where Fark felt stiff to turn, ergo making the second game feel a lot more like a tech demo. The levels were definitely a huge improvement over the second game, since they had a better understanding for how 3D levels should work by doing the Sonic 3K approach of having the levels be in segments of running and then platforming or combat, which is better instead of making a 2D level with the camera behind you with the game trying to be like Sonic, ergo Spark 2. The music is not that memorable, the vehicles were not the best to handle, and the story in this game was really bad with the ending that went on for too long and felt very Deus Ex Machina. But this was a fun one, and I plan to speedrun some stages in the future. Kena Bridge of Spirits is a game that I think is going to be a classic over time. This is one of the games of 2021 that I wish I played sooner. It has a great story that really got me invested in the world of this game. You know the stories behind the people you are saving, as you are the bridge between the human world and the spirit world. Now that I think about it, it's giving me deja vu to Avatar: The Last Airbender. Kena is an intriguing protagonist, and the story isn't really about her. What works about the story is that we are seeing the events that have led this village to the way it is from her point of view. The combat is very simple yet fun, and I barely got tired of it. Pretty videos that take advantage of next-gen hardware with some solid art direction, excellent music that sounds like it came straight from a film, and challenging bosses that are rewarding once you defeat them. It's near perfect. The voice direction can be a bit lacking, and I only wish that it was longer since it was around 8 hours or so. If that's my only problem, you know it's a damn good game. A great debut title for Ember Labs. Hope you make more great games like this masterpiece. Doom 2016 is an interesting one for me. When I was going through the game for about 3 hours, every time I beat a level, I just wanted to shut the game off. There are some weapons that are better than others, I prefer the parts where I am exploring, and the story is pretty one note. I could explain why I wasn't really having a blast with this game like most people say it is, but when I got to a certain point in the game, I started to have fun with the game and it started to click with me. Though that's probably because the super shotgun was my favorite weapon in the game, and it felt like it had that kinetic energy like Ultra Kill. I'm not a fan of the music since it was giving me sensory overload with the amount of stuff on screen I had to deal with and the music just blasting in my ears. The bosses were not that fun to deal with. I have yet to find a boss in an FPS that I liked, and I think Olivia is a pretty forgettable villain. While I did have fun with this game and I can say it is a good game, I do hope that Doom Eternal keeps me more engaged with from start to finish compared to this one. Now for the first game I didn't like that I played this year, the God of War reboot. This is a game I wanted to enjoy, or find some enjoyment in, but I just didn't. The one thing that modern Sony games need to nail down is the gameplay for them, or else the player won't be invested enough to want to see the story through to the end. Though I personally found the combat dull and repetitive. You learn that there is a pattern to the combat through each act of the game per se. You start with throwing the axe all the time, then you learn that Atreus' arrows are really good and can do so much damage in the second act, and it wasn't till the third act where they made the combat interesting by having another weapon be in the game. Most of the bosses are repetitive and boring to fight since they are all the same copy and pasted bosses you fight with a few original bosses here and there. The camera is too zoomed in for my liking. I think that every game needs to have a camera distance setting that was in Devil May Cry 5. The Dwarf Brothers were so annoying, and Atreus was a character I wanted to strangle with my bare hands. That's not to say I think this game is a dumpster fire, since there are things I liked in it. I liked the Blades of Chaos since they covered decent area and had the more fun relic attacks. I liked this version of Kratos. Freyo I really liked, same with Mymir, and the final boss kicked ass if you needed to change weapons and the amazing cinematography and fight choreography. But I think this is the worst of the story-driven PlayStation games I played by far, and I hope Ragnarok is better. And now we get to our first 2023 game, Hi-Fi Rush, which is my 5th favorite game of the year. Hi-Fi Rush was a game that quite literally came out of nowhere, and I am glad I played it, because it is such an awesome game to play. It's a mix of a rhythm game and a hack and slash game, and it works surprisingly well. The rhythm elements are that everything is connected to every aspect of the game, from as little as your walking to as big as the platforming. The combat is easy to get a grip on since it is tied to the rhythm and has a typical combos you can learn with you having to time your combos to the beat, and it is mega addicting. I was tapping my foot to not just the beat of the music, but also the beat of the combat, and I was adoring every minute of it. I love all of these characters so much with personalities that clash off of each other, and you feel like a family by the end of the game. The game also looks really pretty with the art style making it look like a comic or manga panels that have come to life that gives the game a visual style that isn't done much with. The only game I think of doing that is Comic Zone. And it also helps the humor in this game was physical slapstick humor that is top notch, which moments that I was laughing so hard at, as well as the soundtrack that has both original songs and licensed stuff thrown in. And the licensed stuff doesn't feel out of place in this game. If I had one complaint about this game, it's that the levels could sometimes go on for a bit too long, even for a game in the hack and slash genre. But other than that, this was a mega fun time. I had to ponder if this is my game of the year material, and after nearly a year of thinking about it and playing it, I could say that I can understand why this game is one of my friends' game of the year. February is a pretty dry month overall. Not much was happening, and I was just doing more of what happened in January. The only video I made this month was the Celeste video, since I was really busy with school projects and exams. I'd say the Celeste video is one of my most personal videos ever made, and I am proud of that video, even if it wasn't all that long. Though looking back at it, I get the feeling that it was telling me something that I should have picked up on sooner, but we will get to that later. So what did I play this month? I started the month by playing the Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit fan remake. This was one of the more popular Sonic fan games aside from Fallen Star and PO6, and I can see why. There are some cripples I have with this game. The Genesis sound that's in the music is something that I never liked even in the official titles. The later half was the weakest, with stages that went on for a little too long in terms of stage length. Bosses were not that great, which is just a general Sonic problem. But there are so many things this game gets right. When the levels are at the highest point, it feels like the best of classic Sonic, with you needing to use momentum to find new paths and to find the special stages hiding throughout the level, with there being a Sonic and Tails campaign and a Knuckles only campaign, which is really fun to go through and it devises replayability. Special stages were really fun in this game, with them being a mix of Sonic Mania and Sonic Advance 3. I wouldn't put them above the likes of Sonic Mania, but this game gave me the feeling of playing Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Not much to say other than I had a fun time and it's an easy recommendation. I will put a link in the description for this game and all the other fan games I recommend in this video. Then I beat Fire Emblem Engage. I got into Fire Emblem with 3 Houses when it came out, and I loved it with the maps, strategy, and teaching. It is constantly battling Kingdom Hearts 3, Resident Evil 2 Remake, A Short Hike, and Devil May Cry as part of my favorite game of 2019. After that, I played the other modern Fire Emblem games, and now this game. I love this game, though I have problems with it that keep it from beating 3 Houses. The story is one of the most for kids channel things I have ever seen. which is both a positive and a negative. There is a moment in one of the final chapters that has a Deus Ex Machina moment that honestly wasn't my favorite, and I didn't like 2 maps in the game. If that one Deus Ex Machina moment and the 2 maps didn't exist, this would be my favorite Fire Emblem. The great characters that I wanted to learn more about, the amazing maps that took my brain for a spin with how I should traverse from beginning to end, great music that is just my cup of tea. And even though I haven't played much of any of the older titles, this feels like a celebration of Fire Emblem without falling into the traps most media does with nostalgia, like Sonic, which is always a plus in my book. I was just surprised of how much I enjoyed it. This game is an easy recommendation if you're into tactical RPGs or just tactical James and Garrett role. But then we hit Pizza Tower. And I am not gonna mince words here. Pizza Tower is one of the most disappointing games of 2023 for me. I have not played a Wario Land game, but decided to check this out anyway. Now, why was this game a disappointment for me? Some moments of this game really pissed me off and had things I don't like in modern 2D platformers. There were just some stages in the game that I was just not a big fan of, like the level where you turn into a ghost, and the level where you are recreating every war movie on the planet, just to name a few. One of my bigger problems is that you need to collect everything in one perfect run to 100% the level, and it's really annoying in a time where platformers keep on doing this. You could thank Donkey Kong Country Returns for this. The bosses were not fun to play with them dragging out for too long, and this game does one of the worst things in video games, a boss rush in the same stage as the final boss, which is self-explanatory. If you've seen my Mega Man X videos, you will understand. I still really enjoyed this game though. The music was somewhat good, the visuals are pretty except for a few close-ups of Peppino, and the game controls are really good, making speedrunning these levels a blast to do. But it was one of the most disappointing games I played that came out this year, and I do hope that Wario Land games are more up with my speed. March was a month that I don't know much about because I blur on it most of the time and just normally. But it was a great month in terms of gaming on my free time. I was sure to do more with the channel at this time. I released the next Anonymous Gamers episode on Games of 2018 with my friends, and we had a blast working on that podcast. I also released the Mega Man X3 video, which is something I kinda wish I redid, but still I'm glad about the end product. I was basically ready to make the Mega Man X4 video till I saw a certain game that had a used copy available at my local retro game store, and changed my plans because of a certain video that I released in January. But for now, let's talk about video games. Dust was another weird one for me, like Doom 2016. There are things I liked about it. I liked the weapons a lot more in this game than in Doom 2016, since while in Doom, it felt like a certain few weapons are the must needs for the entire game. In Dust, I found a use for every weapon in the game, from as strong as the grenade launcher to as weak as the crossbow. The aesthetic and atmosphere are masterful, reminding me a lot about Bloodborne with how the game is unsettling to look at, which I think works in the game's favor. But the problems I have with the game prevent me from loving it like most people. The later half of the game went on for too long. The secrets most of the time weren't all that satisfying, with you just getting ammo for your weapons, and the bosses are not that good overall, like with most shooters I've experienced. With how much I heard that this game revived the retro shooter genre, I am left disappointed. Still a good game. The original God of War was next on the chopping block. In the heat of the moment, it is really fun. The combat, while very repetitive, has a lot of potential and can be satisfying with you using your regular attacks, then doing magic afterwards. The bosses were really fun with spectacle that goes hard for certain bosses like the first boss, and the music that sounds bombastic and grand, which should work for something as serious sounding as God of War. But I can't say this is a great game or one that has aged all that well compared to other games in this genre, since it has some design decisions that are a little shit. Every time I have to climb a rope or climb a wall is when the game is at its worst, since these moments are slow as all get out. There were only 3 boss fights, which was kind of disappointing. The Path of Hades I will never like. There was only 2 magic spells you really needed, Poseidon's Wrath and Army of Hades, since they do so much damage and are AoE attacks. Zeus's Lightning and Medusa are situational in my opinion. And the game isn't as mechanically as in depth as something like Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, or Ninja Gaiden. I still enjoyed the game, but I hope 2 is a better title. I then bought and played the Klonoa Fantasy Reverie series. I'm going to talk about the individual games in this collection and then talk about the collection as a whole. Klonoa Door to Phantomile was a fun time till after 3-2 where levels started to be a little bullshit at moments. The Ring's grab is a little too short and from what I heard shouldn't be as short as it is in the remaster, and the bosses are very generic. I still had a fun time with it. Klonoa 2 Lunate's Veil is on par with 1 for me. It does levels better, but they go on longer. It does bosses better, but does not explain or show the player what they must do on some. It has more variety, but aside from the board sections, it's not good in my opinion. If I'm being honest, I might prefer it over the original, but not by much. For the package overall, it's a good collection of 2 cult classic titles, and it's all in an affordable price. But I can understand why people love these games, but for me, I am more into the fast pace of Mega Man X or Sonic. Give these games a shot if you haven't already. It would be cool if we got a Klonoa 3 that takes the best stuff from 1 and 2 and refines the not as good stuff to make my personal favorite in the series. Cult of the Lamb is a game that I love to death. The only other roguelike game I played before this is Hades, and I am obsessed with that game. So this game seemed to be right up my alley, and I was right on the money. The only thing I didn't like was that you need 20 members to fight the final boss, so it feels like you are grinding at the point since you need to focus on so many things on your cult. Other than that, it's nearly perfect. You have a slew of weapons like daggers, swords, hammers, and many others to use that can be useful in their own way and can be someone's favorite. There are also other means of combat with the curses you can use that can give you secondary effects like more hearts or having a poison effect on your attacks, making each run of the area different than the previous one. The art direction is one of the best things about the game, giving it its own unique look that you can't find anywhere else. The lifesum stuff in Cult of the Lamb is also really fun, having to manage all of your members with their sleeping arrangements, diseases, faith, etc., giving it a bit of a Persona/Animal Crossing feel to it. Easily one of the best games of 2022 that I wish I played sooner. I ended the month with The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog is something that quite literally came out of nowhere, but was something I was shocked I enjoyed. With The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, I was expecting something that I would enjoy with 2010's Sonic writing, since something like Frontiers' writing seemed to be a one-time thing at the time. But this was pretty fun and charming, with characters that I actually wanted to read what they were saying, and moments that were cute, like Shadow trying to hide Amy's gift from her. It was intriguing to see what was actually going on, looking for clues, doing the non-stop runner minigame with some banger tunes with that one. And I like some little details like Knuckles wanting to be in character for the event. Not the best game of 2023, but a charming one nonetheless. It makes me think that I might be into visual novels. I have the Phoenix Wright trilogy and the Danganronpa games, but that will have to wait. April was another slow month, with college almost ending around this time and me only releasing the Sonic Adventure podcast on the Anonymous Gamers and the Mario movie review. I was surprised that the Mario movie review did really well, since normally movie and TV stuff doesn't get much attention on my channel compared to the other stuff. But I am glad that it did well. I never really played that many games this month either, so this should be a quick one to go through. Dissidia Final Fantasy is another game to add to one of the most disappointing games I have ever played. I think the game looks great for a PSP, with it having fully 3D models and areas that can fit on the PS1. The artwork is amazing as always, with that Tetsuya Nomura look to it that we grew to love, and the controls work well with them being responsive for the portable with no control stick. But the overlaying problems I have with the game is the structure of it. The arenas are too big and have pits everywhere, with you basically needing to glide all over the map to make sure you get to your opponent, and it just becomes boring after a while. I think it takes forever to get any satisfying moves, since this game has a leveling system with you getting more moves with each level you gain, so it just takes forever to get the moves that can be helpful. The camera isn't good, with it being stuck on almost everything, as well as being too close to the character for my liking. The story is very fanservice-y, and some characters just have the most boring plots in all of gaming. The biggest problem I have with the game is that most of the characters are not fun to play. I had fun with characters like Cloud and Squall, but someone like Cecil from Final Fantasy IV was just a slog to play as with slow moves. If you love this game, good on ya. I couldn't get into it. Then we got the silver update for Project 06. Sonic P06 is one of the best fan games alongside AM2R and Mega Man Rock and Roll, and the Silver update showed that Silver could have been fun in 06. The upgrades to Silver and the new abilities that Chaos X added, like Silver spinning into a ball so that he could bounce on enemies, or going full on Ultra Instinct for a good while, feels so natural to the game and makes his stages probably the most fun to speedrun in the game. Blaze was already a character I somewhat enjoyed playing in regular 06, but the update made it so I can't play any character and not say, God, I wish I was playing as Blaze, because her moves are so fun to use. You would be shocked with how many times I just played her Wave Ocean stage. Amy got the best visual makeover for the better with updates to her moves in 06 and some new ones that feel natural, though she needed more stages to fully take advantage of her kit. We got some changes like reworking Omega's regular attacks and new animations for Knuckles and Rouge when they climb up walls, to name a few. We even got some new stuff throughout the year with the patches making changes to the update like new secrets that you can find and reworking of the movesets the characters already have. I can't wait for the next update on the bosses and the end of the world, and I am sure Chaos X can make them fun. I ended the month with the At Rhythm final bar line. It was a game I got on a whim, and it was such a fun time. Final Fantasy soundtracks are some of the best music I have heard in any video game, and I enjoy plenty of rhythm games like Melody of Memories and Taiko no Tatsujin. Sorry if I mess that up, Japanese natives. Needless to say, this is one of my favorite rhythm games. Songs I love to play too, like all the 7 songs, 15's OST, and now 16's OST. Gameplay isn't easy on standard since you need to actively pay attention to what is going on. It also has this feeling that you are conducting an orchestra with the on-rail songs of the game. Trying to get good at the game is very satisfying to do, and every time I get to A rank I always have a need to get back to it. I'll definitely keep playing this game for a while, and you should play it too because it has DLC for the Final Fantasy 16 songs. Can't wait to talk about that game later down in the video. May was a stressful month overall. I was just starting to finish my first semester of college and start with a summer of YouTube videos and getting a job, but my mind would prevent me from having a good day sometimes and leave me with bad thoughts. It doesn't help that I have many regrets that I have been holding ever since childhood. I said this in the Celeste video, but I have anxiety and traits of depression. With the bullying I was facing around that time, that has left me in a mental spiral. I will say that one good thing that happened was I got the Pokemon Scarlet video out. This was a project I have been working on since March, and it's good to see it get a good amount of views, and it was a great feeling I had, as it was a bookend to my problems with modern Pokemon duology. Maybe next year I'll do a video on the DLC for Scarlet if I get it, but after that, I took a bit of break from doing anything YouTube related, and played some games. Resident Evil 4 Remake is a game that I was interested in trying. I love Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I enjoyed my time with the original RE4, but after playing the remake, I think I prefer the remake over the original. The games have a lot of stuff to customize with that you would normally find on PC, like the way the hair can look, which goes to show how advanced this new generation of consoles is. The controls are probably the main reason I prefer this over the original. The original controls were not bad, just something that players that haven't played it before are gonna find weird or off-putting. The remake introduces the control scheme that was cemented in Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 3 Remake, and adds some new things to it like the parry system. The story in the remake is better than the original since there are moments where it wasn't always just quip after quip, and we get some real character moments in the game like with Leon and Louis. There are sections that were a slog in the original that have been removed as well. That being said, there are problems I have with it that prevent me from loving it. I do think that the merchant quests that were in this game aren't all that fun. There would be moments where I could get comboed to death where I just wouldn't have the ability to get away from a crowd. And while I do really like the controls, the aiming can feel a bit sluggish, but that's probably an Xbox problem from what I've heard from friends. But overall, a great remake. I highly recommend it. Then I played Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed, my 4th favorite game of the year. Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed was a fantastic time because Xenoblade 3 is my favorite game of all time, and getting more of it was what I wanted the most. I don't want to say much on this expansion since I want to make a video on the Xenoblade trilogy at some point in the future, so a day that I cried at the end of the game. The combat is the same as Xenoblade 3 with its own little flair to it, kinda like Torna. New characters I love, especially A and Matthew, the 2 protagonists. The world felt new and familiar at the same time. The bosses were fun in this, the new music slaps. I still think Torna is the better story expansion game, but this is a close second. Easy recommendation if you love Xenoblade. Video will come out when I feel confident in my abilities as a creator. And then I played The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And this isn't gonna be an interesting one. Tears of the Kingdom was a game that I overall had a fun time with. It reignited that magic I haven't felt in a long time with a Zelda game since Breath of the Wild. Though I can't help but feel something is off with this game. I feel as though the world feels similar than Breath of the Wild, but is so dense with stuff to do with the base level, the depths, and the Sky Islands. There are actual dungeons in this game, but 3 of them are not all that fun to go through, just more so bearable. In the Wind Temple and the Sage Temple were temples that did not find any enjoyment whatsoever, with puzzles that aren't satisfying or all that challenging, or in depth, and bosses that were lackluster or painfully easy. The performance is 75% solid, with the other 25% being the Ultra Hand and going into the depths. The story felt padded out at times, like after you get the first 4 stages and you go to Hyrule Castle, while which good for exposition was still somewhat a time waster and probably my least favorite part of the game. The shrines were fun bite-sized challenges as always. The new powers were fun, aside from Ascended Fuse, since those 2 were either a power that was in Breath of the Wild, or a way to make the durability issue less of one, which became to be like a band-aid over an open wound. The final encounter was great till the final phase where I was going through deja vu all over again. There are some things Breath of the Wild does better than Tears of the Kingdom, but if I was at gunpoint, I would say I prefer Tears of the Kingdom overall. I made a podcast with friends this back in September about it, so I'll put a link in there so you can listen to it. And then I played Kid Icarus Uprising after hearing about it for the past decade. Kid Icarus Uprising is probably the best 3DS game I have ever played. The controls was the one thing I heard almost everyone complain about, and while I didn't have much trouble with them, I could see why someone would be turned off by them, since it's such an unorthodox control method. The stages are divided into 2 parts. The first part of the stage is air battles, which is what you would expect from something like Sin and Punishment or Star Fox, while the second part of the stage is land battle, which is a typical third-person shooter like Resident Evil 5. But what makes the levels fun is the weapons you use. There are so many weapons to choose from that there is a favorite out there for anyone, with my favorites being the bows, claws, and palms. There are also these powers you could get from Palutena that make the combat more interesting since you could bring in whatever arsenal you want. The music for this game is so good, with Chapter 15's air battle song being one of my favorite stage themes in any game. Every boss is fun to fight and learn while also needing to be able to react on the spot. The graphics for this game is nuts with the detail and stunning art direction. I'd argue that this is one of the best looking games on the 3DS, with the likes of Kirby Triple Deluxe and Mario & Luigi Dream Team. Every character is great to listen to, with Hades being the best character of them all, being both hilarious and intimidating at the same time, cementing him as one of my favorite video game villains of all time. I highly recommend this game if you haven't played it yet. A new favorite game right here. Nintendo, if you're listening, which you're probably not, please remaster this game. It's a classic. I finally got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I know, 6 years later and this man finally got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Yeah, I am slow. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is probably the best Mario Kart to date, even for as much as I love Double Dash. The update to 60 FPS from the lower frame rate that was in the Wii U version of the game is a godsend. The game looks absolutely stunning nearly 9 years later, with Deluxe having the upgrade to 1080p, giving it a cleaner image. With all the content from the Wii U version plus some little things added like the new characters Inkling, Girl, and Boy, and skins for other characters is great. Fantastic music with a jazzy sound to it that is heaven to my ears. My favorite part of the game is the track selection. The worst tracks in Mario Kart 8 are okay, like Water Park, Dry Desert, and Donut Plains 3, but the fantastic tracks are some of the best in the entire series, like Electrodrome, Cloud Top Cruise, and Mount Wario. I do think that 200cc was not made with these courses in mind, since you need to break more than usual with them than some of the other courses in the DLC, but I don't care. This is one of my new favorite car racing games, though I still prefer Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transform or Sonic Riders. I ended the month with Metal Gear Solid. This is my first time playing a game in the Metal Gear series, and I could say that I wasn't disappointed whatsoever. Playing this game, I could see how influential this was when it came out. The story has a focus on what you are doesn't dictate your life, which is something that I resonated with. Helps that the voice acting is better in this than most games from this generation with great voice direction and audio direction. I like the characters overall, with Liquid as a standout since he is basically one of the best villains ever, with lines I could quote forever. The overall stealth is a bit basic, but for one of the first stealth games ever made, not all that bad with gadgets to use and try not to kill anyone is very satisfying. There are some things that infuriate me and prevent me from loving it like most people. Some of the bosses were just not all that fun to fight, like Hind D and the second Sniper Wolf fight. The shooting was finicky with most of my shots missing most of the time. My biggest problem is that the second disc is filled with backtracking through the entire thing and has moments that were a slog to get through, and one of my least favorite bosses I fought in a while. A bit dated, but fun. June was a pretty hard month to get through. I was sleeping a few hours and staying up until almost sunrise. My mental spiral started causing me panic attacks that would take longer than needed to calm me down, with Father's Day weekend being the standout example. I only did the Amphibia Season 3 video and talked about the movies Elemental and The Flash. Amphibia Season 3 was a season I think doesn't get the love it deserves. It was building a story that I think paid off well. So I put all my energy into it and finished editing in 3 days, with an extra day wasted because of copyright claims. But it's another favorite of mine this year. The dual review of The Flash and Elemental is more time waster content. Not to say I enjoy making these. They work like that since it's basically getting my thoughts on a movie, but The Flash is a movie I should have made a whole video on since I hate it so much. So I only played one game this month with all that was happening. And that game was A Hat in Time. A Hat in Time feels like a game that is from an era long gone. I can see this game being made in the 5th generation of gaming when collectathons were all the rage. The game has such charming characters to hear and spend time with in worlds that are just so creative to visit, with locations such as a movie studio, haunted forest, and a town that only has the mafia. Though there are some problems I have with the game. The combat is a little too simplistic and bosses aren't all that fun to fight with drawn out attacks, though these are just problems with most collectathons I have, even some of my favorites like Spyro and Banjo-Kazooie. I will say that stages can go on for a bit too long for my liking, and it starts to feel a bit exhausting, especially with a game where the focus is to collect as many timepieces as you can. Couple that in with backtracking, and it starts to wear me down at the end. Still had a blast, and it's easily one of the best games of 2017. July was a slow month. Anxiety was still getting worse by the day, and I just sat in bed most days just thinking or watching YouTube. So I did something I wish I'd done earlier in high school. I got a therapist. Therapy has been a huge help over the past year, and I have been the most happy I have been since middle school. So if your health system is not screwed up and you think you need help, I highly recommend going to therapy. I did get some videos out this month. I released a podcast on Sonic Adventure 2, which was one of the most fun things I've ever done with my 2 friends, and we had a great time. And I released the Mega Man X4 review, which is super satisfying to finish. I do want to redo that video because of some stuff about it that I didn't like, but still a video I liked. I only played 2 games this month. Fall Guys is one of the most addicting games I have ever played. It helps that this is basically a game of Mario Party, but only the minigame mode, and I love a really good Mario Party minigame. Most of the minigames in Fall Guys are the racing levels, which I don't really mind, and there are other minigames that are fun as well, like the reaction time games. There are some minigames I didn't enjoy though, like Tiptoe, Snowy Scrap, Stomping Grounds, etc. But the fun stuff with friends is some of the most fun I ever had with them. We'll continue to play it after this video. I have played Pikmin before, but I only ever made it to the second day of the game, so I don't really count it as a game I played before on this video. It's been so long since I played the other 3 that why not talk about them when I play them. Pikmin is a game that I low-key kind of suck at, but I do think that it's a good game that has the same kind of design as most Sega games do. The game basically incentivizes replays because if you get better, the faster the game becomes and the less time you spend on the planet wasting time. The game looks really good for a GameCube launch title or close to a launch title. The puzzles were fun to deal with from time to time. I love playing out the day to try and get as many ship parts as possible, and it's somehow really addicting to go back to it to get further into fixing your ship. Though I will say that there are some things that annoy me with this game. The bosses were really bad, with the Emperor Bullbox being the standout example, and that's the final boss. The Pikmin can be really stupid and annoying to deal with in this game, and I think that 30 days is a little too generous. I think it would have made it more suspenseful if it was shortened to say 25 days, so that it isn't too generous but also not too strict. I had a fun time and it will probably get better on a replay. But pray to God that Pikmin 2 is not as bad as I think it is or remember it being. August was a pretty good month overall. Therapy has been going well, and I have started up classes again, so it meant that I was pretty busy in the later half of the month. I did release some smaller videos this month though, but it was more so since I wanted to get started on some projects like Spider-Man and Stage 23, which was happening this fall. So I tried to play as many games as possible before class started, and I think I played a good amount this month. Rockman 20XX Tatake Team Sachi was a game I played because God to be Frank did a video on it, and I decided, why the hell not? This is a hard one to talk about since it's a web browser game that can only be played on a flash player now, and it lasts about 5 minutes. It's an auto-scroller, and I don't think Mega Man auto-scrollers are a good matchup. There's really not much I could say on this game other than I'm glad I played it before it was lost to time, and the song was really good. Then I played the fan game Mega Man Rock and Roll. If Rock and Roll was an official Capcom product, it would be the best classic Mega Man game by a landslide. This is basically Mega Man 9, but if it was more creative with the classic formula. The main thing about Rock and Roll is that you could play as Roll in the game. I like the addition of Roll, since on the outside she looks like the easy mode of the game, but she isn't an easy mode character. She has no charge shot and takes slightly more damage than Mega Man himself. But she has beat, which means she can fly, and she has a double jump, so making the choice between Mega Man or Roll in the game a game. The weapons are all great and give 9 a run for its money, with my favorite weapons being the shield bubble, blast missile, and charge laser. The soundtrack is banging as per a Mega Man soundtrack. The level design is very creative with setting and how you go through them. The final levels of this game are some of the hardest levels I played in a 2D platformer, and did I mention the last 2 screens of this game? It's a labor of love, and I commend Dennis Engelhard for what he has created. I then beat Final Fantasy 16, and I am not gonna mince words here. Final Fantasy 16 is my game of the year, and one of my new favorite games of all time. I know my way around ye old Final Fantasy, since I played a few titles from them. I know a good majority of the stories in the other games I haven't played, like 12 and 13. I cannot describe my hype for this game. The pre-release was beyond massive, and I am glad to say that it didn't disappoint. The combat was something I was beyond happy that they got right. It is quite honestly a masterclass in the hack and slash genre. You are given so many options to choose from with the different icons you can acquire from the aerial setup of Garuda, the area control that Odin can give you, and the setups that could come from Phoenix and Ifrit's abilities. It makes mastering the system so satisfying, but since the game isn't begging you to try and master everything, it is also a game that casuals can enjoy as well. The icon fights are some of the most hyped things in all of not only Final Fantasy, but in gaming period. The music is some of the best music I have ever heard in a video game, dethroning Final Fantasy 15 for my favorite soundtrack in Final Fantasy. I mean, I made a video on Find the Flame alone, and I feel like I could go over some of the other themes in the game. The story of 16 is one that I will never forget, with its themes on human nature, class, and finding who you are in the world. The villain is one you don't meet till after the first third of the game, but when you look back, his presence has been there since Clive awoke Ifrit and killed Phoenix as a kid. I loved almost all of the characters in this game, from a character as minor as Mid to Clive being one of my new favorite video game characters alongside the likes of Uni from Xenoblade and Sonic the Hedgehog. You guys don't know how badly I want to do a video on this game. I do plan on starting to talk about Final Fantasy on the channel one day, but a video on 16 will have to wait. But I hope that on that day it will be worth it, since I've become very infatuated with the world of Celestia. Hope the DLC is a banger. And then I played The Messenger. The Messenger was something I played because Sea of Stars was coming out soon at the time, and hot damn am I glad I played it. The first half of the game is your typical Ninja Gaiden-like game, with the gameplay being similar with its own stuff to distinguish it, like the extra jump after hitting an enemy or lantern. But what makes it great is the switch from 8-bit to 16-bit was more than a gimmick. It is incorporated into the level design of the game, since it's basically the game saying it is time travel, which is very unique and distinguished it from other indie games. The story seems simple at first, but you peel the layers as you go further and your mind will be blown a couple of times. My biggest gripe with the game was that the prophecies in the later half of the game were too vague for my liking, which makes the second half my least favorite part of the game since it's now a Metroidvania. It also doesn't help that there aren't that many fast travel points in the map, but this is a great time and was worth a playthrough, and I highly recommend it, even if it's not really a game I'm going to go back to much. I then ended the month with the original Doom from 1993. I don't really have much to say on this game. Doom was a fine game when I played it. I don't know why I wasn't into this one compared to other boomer shooters I played like Dusk, Doom 2016, and the base Kino shit that is Ultra Kill. Maybe it's the maze-like level design not really making me having fun with it. Maybe it's the fact that the weapon balance is a little off. Maybe it's the music that wasn't my thing. I can't really be sure. It's definitely a game I respect more than I like, but I am not itching to play some of the other games at the moment. September was an overall fine month. Therapy has been going pretty well, but not much was happening with my life at this moment. I did play some games and release videos. I played games from Sage this year and thought about making videos on them. I have a lot of respect for fan game devs and seeing what works they made, even if I'm not a big fan of some of them. I had a lot of fun making those videos and completing them in record time, and I am quite proud of them overall. In terms of the games I played, Sea of Stars was one of my most anticipated games of the year, and it did not disappoint. It is my third favorite game of the year. This is one of the most creative worlds I have ever traveled through in any RPG. Every new area I went to was brimming with personality and excitement. The world building was also on point, with it being a prequel to The Messenger. You see many things that were in The Messenger, but you know why that is if you see in The Messenger. Characters I enjoyed seeing, the conversations, with Girl being one of my new favorite characters in any game. The music and art style are to die for. Those aspects of the game alone took me back to when I first played Chrono Trigger. A combat system that is reminiscent of old RPGs, with a hint of the Mario RPG sprinkled in it, with a little bit of its own thing with the magic without using magic system. Bosses were a blast to battle with and were the perfect length. Just, man, what a game. I want to make a video on this game so badly, so I will say it like this. Sea of Stars is a game that respects and acknowledges the RPGs from the past, that it is downright amazing. Please pick it up if you can. Now we hit Tori 3D, the first budget platformer I played. This was a cute little platformer. It has the charm of Kirby with the speedrunning of Sonic Adventure. Not much to say other than it was fun. But Tori 2 is another Tori game, and that is not a bad thing at all. I found this one to be more enjoyable than 3D, because it was mostly about the speed than in the 3D, where it was trying to blend speed and platforming, which I never found work at all in games that did that, with the exception of Sonic, I guess. For $1, it is worth it. I then finished Trails in the Sky. I played this game back in April, but never got past the prologue for some reason, even though I was enjoying it. I have my problems with this game. I think that half the bosses are not all that fun to fight. The opening is a little too slow for my liking and compared to other RPGs I played. The pacing can make it feel like it's going on forever in some chapters. I know I'm going to Trails hell for this, but Olivia is a character that I did not like whatsoever. But the story really carried the game, with moments where I was verbally reacting to every reveal and moment. The combat was simple, but you can master it to do some crazy shit like one-hit bosses with Joshua. Too bad I sucked at it and needed help from my friend. And aside from Olivia, I really liked most of the characters, with Joshua being my favorite character throughout the entire game. It's a great game that I am now infatuated with, but I hope that second chapter and the third are an improvement. After feeling happy with Trails, I decided sadness was in order, so I played To the Moon. To the Moon was a game that fucked me up so hard. This was a point and click game, so there isn't much in terms of the gameplay, aside from doing puzzles and finding pieces of his memory, but it's all about the story in this game, learning about the life of this one person and how we go from recent memories to the more carefree earlier ones. But there is a twist in the third act that broke me down so hard, and what one of the characters had to do made me hate them. I won't spoil much about this one, since this is a game I think anybody can play if they really like good storytelling. An easy recommendation. Now let's talk about Mega Man, with the first Mega Man game on Game Boy. This is one of the worst Mega Man games I have ever played. I was so frustrated playing this, and I never want to feel it ever again. It's not the worst since it was made on the Game Boy, and Iceman and Fireman are somewhat not hard bosses, but dear god, I hope that the second game was better. And then I played the second game. This game was so much better than Dr. Wily's Revenge, but I felt as though this game was too easy at times. It showered me with lives and introduced E-tanks, but some bosses like Crashman and Needleland were too unpredictable, so overall it was okay. And then we hit the first Mega Man Game Boy game. To many people that is good. I'm gonna be honest, I was not having that much fun with this one. The first half was fine overall, better than 2, but then we reached the second half where the stages go on forever and the bullshit scale is off the motherfucking charts. This was the game where I started to think that Mega Man on Game Boy is something that doesn't work at all, but that will have to wait for another month where I play the other ones. October was a month that was very low energy and uninspired. The closest feeling I got this month was what's happening in Israel. One of my classes for this semester was US government, and we needed to take a new quiz every 2 weeks or so, and learning, watching, and reading stuff related to the Israel-Hamas war was something that put me in a panic right in the middle of the classroom. It was something that made me sad. Because this is what we have to live with, and it's something we shouldn't have to deal with for this generation and the next generation. Before then, I made the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy video. This video was more so a pilot for when I get to the Insomniac Spider-Man games, since I love those games a lot, but I thought talking about the movies first would be better, and well, they are movies I enjoy. The Amazing Duology video will come out around the 10th anniversary of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So what games did I play this month? I replayed Sonic Frontier so that I will be ready for Final Horizons, and Final Horizons was just fine. I like the new cyber stages over the ones in the base game since they were more unique. The music is top tier as always with this franchise. Playing the other characters were fun and were different from each other, and I like that. But it is still Orano's Island, and it is the worst of the 5 islands in my opinion. You need to unlock the skills for the other characters, which is really annoying. Some sections were really not well designed, like the 3rd tower climb with all the rails, the final boss, and the Master Coco trial. And finally, the ending was not worth it because it's a slightly different ending from the original. It had moments that were poorly made, and some things that were really good that I quite liked. But the hardest thing in this franchise? Nah. Sonic Unleashed DLC is still the hardest thing in this franchise. I do want to replay it soon, since it could be better on replay, but for now, I am fine with it existing. Then I finally played Neon White after friends were gushing about it to me. This game has an awful story with awful dialogue that made me want to cut my ears off with how cringe it was. But I think the main reason why I really enjoyed this game is that the gameplay is some of the most fun I had with a first-person game. Unlike most other FPSs where they want you to go in guns blazing killing everything, this one is less focused on shooting demons till they die. It's more focused on the platforming and wanting to get the fastest time on the stages. This is incentivized with the medals you get at the end of each level, with the highest being the diamond medals. I know the quickest way to beat this game, that's basically what those are for. There are some amazing skips you can make with the weapons and the decisions you make. This alone makes it stand out from other games in the genre. While I didn't like the story, I will say aside from Neon Violet, the voice acting is spot on, especially the voice actor for White, and the game gave me Persona 5 vibes with the aesthetic and the end of mission animation. This is a game you shouldn't miss and is a fantastic time. Then I tried out Mind Night since it was free. This is a social deduction game like Among Us. It is really fun with friends, but what puts it below Among Us in my opinion is that it is mechanically very simple and doesn't create that much suspense or suspicion that Among Us really gives to players. It also isn't very long with matches that last at least 2 minutes when Among Us has about 7-minute matches. I wouldn't say it's bad, I mean it is a free game after all, but there could be so much room to grow in a sequel. Then Spider-Man 2 was released to the public, and I love this game so fucking much. This is my second favorite game of the year. I had to think for a while if this game was better than Spider-Man 1. The game takes advantage of the tech in the PS5 to have many awesome things happen, like the Sandman fight in the beginning of the game, being the technical showcase for the PS5 in general. The swing is better than the first game by not only having customization in the menu for it, but by also having better traversal moves like the slingshot launch, loop-de-loop, and the addition of web wings being one of the best ways to travel. The combat is also more engaging since there are no suit powers, but more so abilities Peter and Miles have. They also introduced a parry system to make the combat feel more kinetic than the original and Miles. People complain about the gadgets in this game or the lack thereof, but I saw it as a necessary evil to make sure that it wasn't all that easy. It improves on so many things from the original and in Miles Morales, while improving on the progression of things like how in this game, crime is not tied to area completion and it's just a distraction that you could do every now and again. I will also say that the story was one I was not expecting to be on par with the first game for me. Harry was a character I think we all knew the fate of when this game was showing off, but the best thing about this universe of Spider-Man is that we all know who the villains are gonna be, but the journey is one we don't know about. So seeing it happen is what I love about this iteration of Spider-Man. I hope they do DLC for this game like they did for the first game, since there are some things in the side missions that are left on a cliffhanger. But either way, this is a fantastic game. It might give the first one a run for its money. I ended the month with Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, another game on the list that I couldn't stop playing till the end. The story is nothing all that amazing about it, it's just a little fun story that's a little silly at moments, kind of like Jet Set Radio, but the core gameplay is where it's at. The core gameplay of grinding to get the most points and to get to higher places for graffiti is so satisfying. The soundtrack is also fire, and the cel shading sells it as the Jet Set Radio successor. The only problems I had with it was that the combat was not all that fun or kinetic for a game focused on combos and kinetic movement, and the bosses were either annoying to deal with or had attacks that were annoying. Still an amazing game that is well worth the money. November was a weird time. So thinking about all that was going on in Hamas, I was able to have a little fun at Thanksgiving with my families, till I got COVID at the tail end of the month, which halted and even cancelled videos from being made, like the Scott Pilgrim Takes Off review. Though I was able to get the Mega Man X5 review out, and it's a review I am very proud of, since I seem to be able to be one of the few people who actually likes the game and was glad to get it all out there. Made a Game Awards voting video that was supposed to be 12 minutes long, but hey, I'd say that shows how much I love talking about video games, and I made a Last of Us 2 remaster video that quickly became one of the most viewed videos on the channel. And I will admit, I did make the video before I learned more about it, and I should have waited for that announcement trailer, but I do still think that it is a discussion we need to have about Sony and their stranglehold on gaming and how The Last of Us is the key factor in it. Throughout the month, I played some games. We continue our Mega Man journey with Mega Man 4 on Game Boy. Mega Man 4 was a game I was hoping to enjoy. The first half of Mega Man 4 is really fun, better designed than 1 through 3, but then we reach the second half of the game, where it seemed like there was something bullshit happening every 5 seconds, with Crystal Man being the worst stage in any of the Mega Man Game Boy games. And then we hit Mega Man 5. Not gonna lie, I was kinda surprised that this was a good one when the previous Game Boy games were either middling or just not good. Nothing was bullshit, the levels were ones where you can go at your own pace, bosses had the perfect balance, the music was not awful, and the Mega Arm is probably my favorite charge weapon in the series. Surprisingly, this ended on a high note. The easiest Mega Man Game Boy game I recommend. And then I thought, hey, let's torture myself with Mega Man DOS and Mega Man 3 DOS. I decided to conjoint these two because they are the worst games I have ever played, and I have played Sonic Free Riders. The controls are not good, the graphics look ugly as sin, there are annoying level design moments, and stages take forever. Whatever you do, do not play these games, it is not worth it. Then the Mario Kart 8 DLC was finished. This DLC came out back in 2022, but it ended this month, so I thought I'd talk about the whole thing right here and now. Booster Course 1 was underwhelming to say the least. It was overall saved by Coconut Ball being one of the most popular courses in all of Mario Kart, and it mostly stayed the same when being put into Mario Kart 8. The Toad Circuit from Mario Kart 7 being one of the returning courses felt off. The tour tracks were not that fun to play, and tracks like Choco Mountain and Sky Garden were just fine. Ninja Hideaway was a good track, but not enough to say a somewhat underwhelming first wave. Booster Course 2 felt the same to me. The Startup Cup was the first cup I would say was overall good, but the Propeller Cup had Mushroom Gorge, which was the only good track in that cup, and the rest are not good tour tracks and one of the weaker GBA courses. Booster Course 3 is actually my favorite one. The only negative thing I could say about it is that London Loop is not all that exciting of a track, but they bring in some all-time classics and favorites like Maple Treeway, Boo Lake, Beach Garden, and Seven's Rainbow Road, one of my all-time favorite tracks. Just an all-around fun time. Booster Course 4 is a pretty good one. Amsterdam Drift is not all that exciting, and Mario Kart Circuit on DS is one of the lesser tracks in my opinion, but there are some great ones in here like Yoshi's Island, Waluigi Stadium, DK Summit, and Singapore Speedway, another great one. but not the best one. Booster Course Wave 5 is pretty good. Moonview Highway is a little too short for my liking, and Sunset Wild is one of the more weaker GBA courses. But like with 3 and 4, there are some great ones in here, like Squeaky Clean Sprint and Vancouver Velocity. The rest are good, but not the highs of 3 and 4. The last course pass was a good send-off to Mario Kart 8. There are things in here that aren't that good. Daisy Circuit is always going to be one of the tracks of all time, and Rosalina's Ice World is not that fun to go through with the ice physics, but the inclusion of Rainbow Road from Wii was a stellar one, and inclusions such as DK Mountain make me happy. Overall, I quite like the Booster Course. It may have had a rough start, but ended on a good note. Definitely put 8 Deluxe over Double Dash as my favorite Mario Kart. And then I borrowed a copy of Mario Wonder. Mario Wonder was something I played on a whim one day. This game left me with no feeling whatsoever with the trailers, and I tried the demo at Best Buy, and I still had no strong feelings whatsoever. Now that I have finished it, I can say that this is a good game. The Wonder gimmick has some cool and creative ideas, but some of them can be really slow, and I didn't really like slow platformers. The game looks pretty, and there are some songs I really like, but there are some worlds that are slow paced like World 2 and World 4. The airship levels were never really my favorites as they are auto-scrollers, and I was never that big into the bosses outside of the final boss. This is a 2D Mario game, and I enjoyed some of the 2D Mario games like 3 and World, but I'd rather run towards the 3D ones over Wonder anytime soon. I then played Mega Man on Game Gear. For how many times I heard this game as the worst Mega Man game ever made, it was honestly not that bad. It's just a downgraded Mega Man 5, and as someone who loves Mega Man 5, I had no problem with it. There are some problems I have with the game though. There is no save system for the game, so if you die, you have to remember the password or restart from the beginning. And the fact that some of these stages were not made with a scroll screen in mind, but the worst Mega Man game ever made, this is not. This is a fine time that was not as bad as people say it is, just not worth playing in the modern day. And then we get to my favorite 2D platformer of the decade, Gravity Circuit. This is probably one of the best platformers of the decade and the best Mega Man X and Mega Man Zero game since 03 in 2004. The controls are tight as hell, with combat that is not Devil May Cry levels of complex, but gets the job done and values risk for reward, which is how I like my Mega Man games. The graphics have this Game Boy Color look to them that I love. The stages are perfect, with them being stages that allow you to go at your own pace, which is what I prefer since I like to go fast in my platformers. The soundtrack is a fucking bop, and the story was really damn good. If you love Mega Man X, you will love Gravity Circuit, and since this is my channel, you guys probably know you love Mega Man. I then ended the month with Sonic Superstars. Playing this, I can see the reasons why people like it and why people hate it. There are things in this game that are not good, the bosses are either long or annoying, soundtrack is not one of the better ones in the series, and some stages are just automation. But there are things in this game that are good. The stages are fun to explore, the Chaos Powers are a great addition, and the controls feel almost exactly like the classic games. I did enjoy the game more than I hated it, but I would have put it above the games like Sonic 1, 3K, or Mania. December was a chill month overall. I was able to spend time with my family for the season, and it was a good time. I released their videos this month. A video on Wish that was mainly about how Disney this year is concerning, since this was the worst they've been financially since the 2020 pandemic. Then I made the Sonic Dream Team review since it looked like an interesting game, and it was a good way to see how the recording looked for a video I plan to do since one of the games is only on mobile devices. Then we end the year on my one last scene video on the final scene of Amphibia. This was an easy script to write, and it was a collab project. I thought it would be fun, and it was. And talking more about video is not a bad thing whatsoever. Let's see if I can get through this fast. Party Animals is a game I played a few times for game nights, and it was a blast. There are probably other party games to play like Among Us or Uno, but Party Animals is stupid and I love it. The main goal is to kill your enemies as fast as possible by either hitting them hard enough till they knock themselves out, or you just throw them into the toxic waste below, or off a plane, or off a bridge. You're basically just learning how to commit homicide. It's pretty fun overall, not gonna lie. Same with Lethal Company. It was a game I never heard of until some friends of mine were playing and talking about it all the time, and after some slight gaslighting, I picked it up. I can see why this game is getting recognized a lot. It's a roguelike survival horror game where the main goal is that you must collect as many random objects as possible to meet ends meet. And there's some really addicting stuff about it, including the fact that you can pick up stuff like shovels and guns to defeat the monsters that you have to keep at bay. This game is also very scary. Like, I think I have a recording on Twitter somewhere of me shitting my pants just at them knocking over a bridge. I highly recommend these two games. They're fun multiplayer distractions. Then I streamed The Legend of Korra that was on consoles. This was honestly a fun time. I played the OG Avatar trilogy of games as a kid, but they never made me feel like the Avatar. Thankfully, Korra has all I wanted in an Avatar game. The ability to use any bending you want, the different types of bending are unique, with Earth being more about hard to hit, while Air is more about agility and AoE attacks. The levels don't offer much in terms of platforming like any other gimmick, which is my preferred hack and slash level, unlike the stealth sections of Metal Gear Rising or puzzles in the Devil May Cry games. Difficulty balancing is out of whack, with the game being pretty simple at first, but then becoming one of the hardest hack and slashes I've ever played, and for the record I was playing on normal. The final boss was hard as balls because of the difficulty balancing, and the enemy variety is really lacking, with them not really offering much. There is a lot of problems I can mention with The Legend of Korra, but if people can love Metal Gear Rising for the music and bosses, I can enjoy The Legend of Korra for doing what I wanted for an Avatar game. This one will definitely get a video one day. I then finished Omori. I am not gonna lie, this is one of the best games to come out this decade. I don't want to spoil too much about this game, since it will be better if you play it as blind as possible. It is very creative about the world and the combat system, that it is a huge resemblance to Earthbound. The emotion system in the combat makes it stand out compared to other turn-based RPGs. The story in this game can go from funny to one therapy session later. There were some things I wasn't a huge fan of, like the boss's sweetheart and the slime girls, but if you like games like Earthbound, Mother 3, and trauma dumping, then this game is for you. Lunistis is the only other budget platformer I played that wasn't the Tori games. This game was one I heard about at the beginning of this year, but surprisingly didn't get to till the end of the year. This is one I'm quite mixed on. It has good controls and some cute visuals that replicate the Sega Saturn very well, but the level design is something that I take issue with. There are moments where it wants you to react to something that is coming up fast, like when you are grinding on rails or on water slides, and then there is the opposite side of the spectrum where it wants you to precise platforming when the controls are somewhat slippery. I mean, it's a good time waster, but I think Tori has a beat for short, cheap games so far. I then ended the year by streaming the mod Sonic Forces Overclocked to some friends. Sonic Forces is my guilty pleasure game. I know that it is not good, but there's something about it that I can't really hate about it. This mod quite literally almost came out of nowhere, but good god does this mod rule. It's not all that long since I beat it in an hour, but what it does have makes the concept for forces seem like it can work. Levels can go for a typical length in a typical boost game, and there are moments where the game was actually pretty hard and I died a few times. It all helps that the production values in this mod are really high, with new models and set pieces for the game. The cutscenes also have this artsy look to them that I love a lot. There are some things that need to be ironed out in terms of quality of insurance, but I highly recommend this mod if your PC can handle it. But make sure to read the notepad in the mod folder to make sure it works. And that was the end of 2023. If I were to put my top 5 games right here, right now, I would say Final Fantasy XVI, Spider-Man 2, Sea of Stars, Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed, and Hi-Fi Rush. Hopefully you stuck around this far in, cause I hope that these videos I make on my off time really stuck with you to the end and inspires you. This year has its ups and downs, but doing this was always something I was proud of. So before we end the video, allow me to tell you about some games I am excited to play or try next year. Persona 3 Reload is a game that I am picking up. I love Persona 4 Golden and Persona 5 Royal, but never played any version of Persona 3 before. I have FES on my PS3, but that's really it. So I decided I am gonna play this version, since I hear that the new content from FES is not all that good and you are not catching me playing the portable version either on the PSP or on modern consoles. The new music sounds really good from what I heard, and Persona combat was something I always like, so I can't wait to try it out. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth looks really interesting. I need to get to a remake before I get to this game, so I hope I can stream it before then. But Rebirth just looks really cool from the footage we've seen, and the main theme that played at the Game Awards was phenomenal. Definitely gonna play it. Princess Peach Showtime was a game I did not expect to catch my attention. I I have kind of fallen out of Mario somewhat, since Wonder was a game that just didn't interest me till I finally played it and somewhat understood it. But something about the presentation of the game and the interesting location has got me wanting to try the game out. I am also probably one of the few people who thinks that Super Princess Peach is one of the more underappreciated Mario games, so I hope this is a good game to play through. Rise of the Ronin was shown at the Game Awards this year, and it looks so dang cool. It's being done by Team Ninja, and I enjoy some of their titles like the first and second Modern Ninja Gaiden games, but this game seems to be looking more like Neo, which I have but haven't played yet. I love a ninja aesthetic and a hack and slash game, so this seems right up my alley. Hades 2 might be in early access this year, and I am hyped for it. Hades is one of my favorite games ever made, and Hades 2 looks like it's gonna be on par with the original. The art looks amazing, the gameplay looks fantastic, the music is so good. Just what else do I need to say? I have faith in Supergiant Games on this one. Fantasy Life I is one I am also hyped for. The original Fantasy Life on 3DS is one that I have a lot of respect for and put so many hours into as a kid. So getting a sequel that adds even more to it to do from the pretty stacked list from the original is pretty hype, I'm not gonna lie. Earthblade is a game that also might come out in 2024, and I hope I love it. It's by the creators of Celeste, and it seems to be a Metroidvania-like game. Now, I have a very strange relationship with Metroidvania, as I mentioned before. I play some like Yoku's Island Express for an hour or two, and then drop them and never play them again. The only ones I have finished to the end are from the Metroid series and the Mega Man ZX duology, so I hope I can get immersed in Earthblade if it comes out this year. You bet your ass I am over the mood for the Thousand Year Door remake. When I saw the reveal trailer back when it goes out in the September Direct, I flipped my shit over it. TDYD is one of my favorite childhood games, and it seems to be a prettier version of that game without you needing to spend your vital organs to play the game. I want to make a video on this game, but I feel I must make a video on the original Paper Mario. We'll see where it goes. Metaphor was a game I did not expect to be interested in. It's a game that looks to be a mix of the Persona combat and the Shin Megami Tensei combat, or in my terms. Persona mixed with Pokemon, since I haven't played any S&T game yet. But the desert aesthetic is something I have always fascinated with, and the music from the trailer sounds really good. Hope this is a good play. Before I sign off, I want to thank you all for watching my videos this year. It means a lot to me. I also want to thank my friends for making the year more enjoyable. They are honestly the highlight of the year. Till next time, have a nice day.